What's up, world of YouTube? Evan Minton here, bringing you another Christian apologetics video. Now, in the last episode, I'm thinking in podcast terms. In the last video, I did a introduction to the Kalam Cosmological Argument for God's existence. I laid out the premises, and I gave a basic defense of both premises. I talked about Big Bang cosmology, the second law of thermodynamics, and the two philosophical arguments against infinities that establish the second premise, the universe began to exist. And I also gave 3 reasons to think the first premise is true, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. This is the syllogism proper. Up here on the screen. 1. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. 2. The universe began to exist. 3. Therefore, the universe has a cause. And in the last video, I talked about some of the reasons to believe both of those premises. But, as you can imagine, many atheist philosophers, scientists, and laymen on the internet have a lot of objections to this argument. And I'm going to, in this video, address the objections given to premise 1. That whatever begins to exist has a cause. So fire up those neurons, because we're about to use the brains that God gave us. Objection 1. Quantum mechanics disproves the first premise. Theoretical physicist, popular speaker, and best-selling author Lawrence Krauss has garnered recognition for his book A Universe from Nothing. In this book, Krauss argues that the quantum vacuum allows our universe to pop into existence out of nothing. But theoretical physicist Alexander Vilenkin has corrected Lawrence Krauss in an online science journal. This is what Vilenkin wrote, quote, "A vacuum is ordinarily thought of as empty space, but according to modern particle physics, what is empty is not nothing. The vacuum is a physical object endowed with energy density and pressure. It can be in a number of different states, or vacua. The properties and types of elementary particles differ from one vacuum to another." End quote. Does this sound like nothing to you? Remember, nothing is what rocks dream about. It has 0 properties. If it has any properties at all, it's not nothing, it's something. The quantum vacuum is very much something. It is this sea of roaring, violent energy governed by physical laws and has a physical structure. It's a sea of roaring, violent energy governed by physical laws and has a physical structure. That is not the definition of nothing. Nothingness has no properties. Nothingness is not a thing. Nothingness is no thing. The word nothing is a term of universal negation. So the quantum vacuum is not nothing. Moreover, the quantum vacuum is a part of our universe. So if the universe came into being, then that means that the quantum vacuum came into being. And if the quantum vacuum came into being, then that means that you still need to answer the question, where did the universe come from? Because you have to answer the question, where did the quantum vacuum come from? Objection 2. We have no examples of things beginning to exist. One rebuttal to the Kalam Cosmological Argument that I've seen, mostly from internet infidels, is the argument that the premise, whatever begins to exist has a cause, cannot be confirmed because we have no examples of anything beginning to exist. We only have, they argue, examples of matter being rearranged into other things. According to some atheists, nothing ever begins to exist because the stuff of what something is made of is nothing more than rearranged matter. I think this might be one of the worst objections to the Kalam Cosmological Argument that I have ever heard. Where were you the night when the dinosaurs were killed by a meteor? Were you out on a date with your gal looking at brachiosauruses? Now that I think of it, where was I when the dinosaurs were killed by a meteor? I have no recollection of seeing that meteor wipe out the dinosaurs. And how did I avoid destruction if I were there? Maybe we weren't there at all. Maybe, just maybe, we didn't exist yet. Maybe we began to exist at some point after that. That's a possibility. The problem with this objection is that it confuses X with the material stuff that X is made of. Even if the material that comprises X has always existed, the material that X has always existed, that doesn't mean that X has always existed. Even if the matter and energy that comprises my body has always existed, it doesn't mean that I have always existed. The reality is that we actually have a lot of examples of things coming into being. Cars, trucks, galaxies, planets, people, houses, computers, telephones, video games, books, MP3 players, animals, etc. These things didn't always exist, even if it were true that the matter these things were made of always existed. The objector is presupposing that everything that begins to exist has a material cause. By material cause, I mean the stuff which was used to assemble the object in question, the material out of which the object was made. By efficient cause, I mean something or someone that brought the thing in question into being, something that someone that brought about the beginning of the object. So, for example, the material causes of this video are the computer and the program iMovie, which was used to comprise the MP4 file. However, the efficient causes of this video would be the author of the content and YouTube, who allowed me to upload it and share it with you guys. This distinction between material and efficient causation was made famous by the ancient philosopher Aristotle. Material causation and efficient causation are really the only ones relevant to discussions on the Kalam Cosmological Argument, so I'm not going to get into those. The objector is presupposing that everything that begins to exist has a material cause, but that presupposition is irrelevant to this argument. I would agree that in our experience, whenever something comes into being, it had a material cause as well as an efficient cause, thus rendering us with as much inductive evidence for material causation as we do for efficient causation. But this inductive evidence can be overridden if we have powerful evidence that all physical reality came into being out of nothing a finite time ago. We saw in the previous video, or at least I'm assuming you watched that video. I hope you did, because this is part 2. If you haven't, you should stop and go back. But in the previous video, we saw that we do have powerful scientific evidence, not to mention philosophical arguments, that the universe began to exist out of nothing in a violent, rapid explosion-like expansion that Fred Hoyle dubbed the Big Bang Theory, and which later got a funny sitcom named after it. The various strands of evidence supporting the Big Bang Theory, the second law of thermodynamics, and the two philosophical arguments against the possibility of actual infinites existing and of being able to traverse an actually infinite number of things prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the universe began to exist ex nihilo. What a rational person cannot say is that something began to exist without either a material cause or an efficient cause. You can say something began to exist without a material cause, but it had an efficient cause. But you can't say that something began to exist without either a material or an efficient cause. No cause whatsoever. That would be to say it came into being from nothing. Objection 3. Your third argument for the first premise commits the fallacy of composition. The fallacy of composition is when one infers that the whole of something has a certain property because a particular part of said thing has that property. If you inferred that because my shoes are black, therefore my entire outfit is black, you would be committing the fallacy of composition. Some skeptics point out that my third argument for the premise whatever begins to exist as a cause commits this fallacy. This third point, that common experience and scientific evidence are constantly confirming and never falsifying the law of causality, by no means commits this fallacy. The third argument is an appeal to inductive reasoning. I'm not making the inference that the universe as a whole had a cause on the basis that every individual part of the universe has a cause. In fact, that third argument doesn't even refer to the universe, and it doesn't even refer to parts of the universe. The third argument in favor of premise 1, which I gave in my last video, is an appeal to inductive reasoning, not reasoning by composition. Inductive reasoning is when you draw an inference about every member of a class of things based on a sample of said class. Scientists use this reasoning all the time in coming to scientific conclusions. The third argument for premise 1 is that since every example of a thing coming into existence is traceable to an efficient cause, then if you know something came into existence, then you should conclude that it had an efficient cause. We have an ocean of examples. Of things coming into being via a cause, and no examples of things coming into being without a cause. Again, whether it's a sandwich, a computer, a building, or whatever. Whenever we see something coming into being, whenever we witness it, we don't witness it pop into being out of nothing with no cause whatsoever. We witness people putting them together. If a tree falls in the forest, it was due to lightning, termites, or woodsmen. It didn't just fall over for no reason whatsoever. Objection 4. Premise 1 is true of everything in the universe, just not true of the universe itself. The universe is an exception to the law of causality. This objection is not posed by very many atheists, but there have been a few who brought this objection up to me in conversations that I've had with them. These atheists don't deny the law of causality entirely. They don't deny that in general everything that begins to exist has a cause, but they merely assert that it applies only to everything inside the universe, not to the universe itself. For all we know, these atheists argue, the universe could have popped into being without a cause. It would be the exception to the rule. The problem with this objection is pretty obvious. The rebuttal commits a logical fallacy known as special pleading. What is the special pleading fallacy? Special pleading is when one makes up an exception to a firmly established rule when there's no reason to think that that exception to the rule is true or exists. There's just no reason to think that, given that everything else that begins to exist has a cause, the universe would be the exception to that. Now, the atheist can escape the charge of special pleading if he provides rational justification. That is to say, if he gives us some evidence or some reasons to think that the universe is the exception to the rule, that everything that begins to exist has a cause. However, there is no reason that I can see to think that the universe is an exception to the law of causality. These are the 4 most common objections to the first premise of the Kalam Cosmological Argument. As we have seen, they are not very good objections. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that if any of these objections to the Kalam Cosmological Arguments were ones that you had, hopefully I've removed those and you are now convinced that the argument is sound. If not, Stay tuned. Maybe your objection is to the second premise of the argument, that the universe began to exist. That will be the premise that I will be defending in the next video. If you like the video, give me a like, click the subscribe button, turn on notifications so that you're not subject to YouTube's algorithm, and you will always be notified when I've got new content out. And if you would, please consider becoming a patron. If you become a patron, you will get all of these YouTube videos early, before they are released to the public. You will get all of my blog posts and podcast episodes early. You'll get all of my Kindle books that are the adaptations, Kindle adaptations to the books I wrote. And if you're a $10 patron, you can get Patreon exclusive audiobooks to those aforementioned books. So, until next time, keep using the brains that God gave you.